Hi everyone, welcome to today's Ask the Experts webinar. I'm Tracy Zatinik, the Marketing Manager at Amplifi. I want to thank you for joining us to discuss Managing Channel Syndication with Salsify. As you know, when registering for this webinar, you had the option to pre-submit questions, which we will be answering today. During the presentation, you have the ability to submit questions through the Q&A feature. However, due to our limited time and the complexity of our questions, we have follow-up at the end of the conclusion of the session set aside so that we can cover any questions that come up, or we will follow up by email after. This session is being recorded. You can expect an email from us in the coming days with your link to the resource, or you can locate it on our website at goamplify.com. Without further ado, let's get to know our experts. First up, we have Ametra Tipton. Ametra is the Salsify practice lead here at Amplifi with years of experience working in the MDM space. Ametra is responsible for diving into new technology platforms to not only understand feature functions, but also how to solve client use cases that leverage new partnerships and the internal enablement of delivery and sales for new platforms. In addition to her duties as a practice lead, Ametra is a principal consultant responsible for successful deliveries across Amplifi's portfolio. Also joining us is Kelsey O'Brien. Kelsey is a product manager on the platform team at Salsify, responsible for key features including channels, security, and multilingual content. Prior to joining the product team, Kelsey spent nearly 4 years on the customer success team, helping customers maximize the value that they get out of the Salsify platform. Up next, we have Kyle Pavao. He is an implementation consultant at Salsify, who works with new Salsify customers to train and configure Salsify in a way that meets their core business use cases. The nature of his role requires him to have a strong understanding of all core aspects of the platform. Kyle has worked with Ametra at Amplifi on a couple of implementation projects and looks forward to partnering on more in the future. So now we'll let Kelsey give us an overview on what we'll be covering today.
Great, thank you, Tracy. Hi, everyone. I'm a product manager at Salsify. For anyone that may not be familiar with Salsify, we are a product experience management platform. We help brands centralize all of their product information into a single centralized source of truth, and also transform that content to meet various different retailer requirements. So you can syndicate your product content to Amazon, Walmart, your own direct-to-consumer site, etc. We also provide data pool services, so you can syndicate to the GDSN from Salsify, as well as below the fold content via our enhanced content module. Today, we wanted to do a deep dive into setting up syndication channels in Salsify. Using our channels, you're able to create a lot of efficiency using the same core underlying set of product content to meet the needs of many different retailers, whether that's transforming your product title for Amazon to include the brand name and for Walmart to not include the brand name, transforming your units of measure from inches to centimeters, etc. We'll also talk about what the publish process looks like, how you can use Salsify to ensure that you're meeting your exact retailer requirements and that your content is fully ready to go before you publish it to a retailer, getting feedback back from a given retailer, and the various different mechanisms for publish from Salsify. As Tracy mentioned, we did get a couple of questions ahead of time, so we will go ahead and start with those, and I will pass to Tracy to kick us off with the first question.
All right, so we have our first question, and it is, how does Salsify enforce the data requirements of retailers?
Oh, Ametra, you are muted.
I'm good now?
Yes.
All right, so the way that we enforce the retailer requirements within Salsify when it comes to data is via a readiness report. So that allows us to obviously make sure that our source data is meeting all of the requirements for the given retailer that we're going to be syndicating to. So now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll walk through what a readiness report in Salsify looks like. So as you can see here, I'm on a target channel, which is a direct connection from Salsify to the retailer target. And I'm just going to navigate here to this tab up top called readiness. As you can see, I already have a couple of products in my channel, and we can already actually see what those readiness scores are. They're currently set to 0 because we haven't mapped anything. But while I'm on this product screen, I did just want to talk about the ability that Salsify enables customers to see not only the data requirements at an attribute level, but also on a product level. So here on the product screen, I can obviously see the given product that I have in my Salsify instance with the identifier there. And then as we go over here to the right, these are all of our target attributes. So now I'm just going to quickly jump to our attributes tab here and we'll take a look at what that looks like. Now straight away, we can see some information up top that tells us what target is definitely expecting to publish a product successfully. So straight away, we're going to have 30 required attributes. And that's obviously going to be global because we haven't actually mapped a category. So on most of the implementations that we're working on, obviously the customers are working within a given area and their products are of a certain type, right? So the data that Target's going to require for activewear, which is what we'll be working with today, is going to be a lot different from food and beverage, for example. But now I'm actually just going to go through and map a couple of attributes out, and we'll talk through how Salsify supports the ability to utilize the source data of a customer and have formulas that may be able to transform our data, as Kelsey mentioned earlier, for a given retailer, our direct mappings, and even the ability to set some static values too. All right, so the first one we're going to take a look at is going to be item create type. As you can see, something that's super helpful in the mapping process for these channels is that we can simply click the question mark and we'll see a little bit of information about how we should go about tackling this one. Right, so here we're saying that there's going to be 2 valid values because it's a pick list or a category. So I'm going to jump here and I'm going to choose my source. So this is where I would determine if I want to utilize an attribute that I already have set up as a property for my core products in Salsify, or if I want to use a formula, for example, a single value, or nothing, which is something that we would utilize if this was optional. But if it's required, we want to make sure we map something. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go single value. And as you can see here up top, I have my view help text, and I'm just going to simply take standard item and I'll paste it here. All right, and then we'll do a save. Now, as you can see, every time we make an update in our channel, the system wants us to go ahead and do a refresh. That's because it's going to tell us what % of completion is this given attribute on this screen. So what products actually have a value for this? Or if I jump to products, we'd see that reflected there on that view we were on previously. But I'm gonna map out 2 other properties and then we'll do our refresh. All right, so in the case of something maybe like collection name, we know we don't want to alter that. We want that accurately represented from our source data. So I'll map that directly from an existing property. And now there's one other one that I want us to take a look at that we're going to utilize a formula for. And this one is a super common use case. So most of the time, the customers that are utilizing Salsify have their own internal way of organizing their products, be it in hierarchies or taxonomies. But of course, Target may not be a one-to-one for how they're actually going to categorize and represent your products in their store or on their site. So we'll use a formula to represent our department. Right. So if I come here and I'm going to jump in and I'm going to choose source just as I have before, but I'll select formula this time. Right. And now we can see that this box, this text box is going to open up and it's going to allow me to put in a formula that's going to essentially transform my source data into what Target expects to see. Right. So what we're doing here is essentially saying, I want to take my class value from my source, but I have that at the class level as women's clothing. But essentially what I'm going to do is take the clothing off, because at department level, Target's going to treat it as men's and women's, and then they'll jump down to clothing and so on and so forth. So we'll just go ahead and save this formula. And now we're going to go ahead and do a refresh. So now I'm back on the attribute screen, and we can see obviously the one that we set to a static value, a standard item. So that's going to apply to all of our items that get published to Target from this channel. And then when we jump to department, we can see that our products that are actually in this channel are at 100% completeness for this as well, with this formula applied. So that also means that there is a value on the source side of things for our class property. And then lastly, we'll drop down to our collection name, which we map directly. And if it's not populated, then it won't be updated in our channel either. But let's take a look at how it looks on the products view. So we can see we're at 0% initially, but now we've trickled up to 6% based on what we've input thus far. So looking at how Salsify is able to actively let customers know where their data stands for retailers is super helpful. But I also want to ask Kelsey, just in terms of how we're utilizing our readiness reports here for our direct connection to Target, can readiness reports be utilized for other types of channels?
Yes, absolutely. So we're looking at the Target direct connection channel here. We have a variety of direct connections to retailers like Walmart and Amazon. However, as you know from working with retailers, they all are at different stages in their digital maturity journey. So where Walmart has a full set of APIs for automatically sending product content, a smaller retailer like a Petco may only be able to receive a spreadsheet. So regardless of what your retailer's requirements are, we're able to build out a readiness report to show you those requirements and enforce any of their data validations. And the output may be that it goes directly via API to that retailer's platform if they've enabled that, or it may be that we just output the spreadsheet that you then need to send through to your buyer or your merchant directly. We have tens of thousands of different retailer endpoints and different versions of retailer spreadsheet requirements already built into the Salsify system. But if you happen to have a brand new category sheet from a small retailer that we haven't worked with before, you can just send that template through to our support team, and we can turn around a new readiness report for that retailer with their exact specifications within, we say 3 to 5 business days, but these typically get completed closer to 1 to 2 business days. So it's very easy for us to create these readiness reports for almost any set of retailer requirements.
That's great. Thanks for that one, Kelsey. Now, when I just went through that mapping process, I think everyone saw when I mapped our collection name attribute, for example, how it didn't update. So there are other cases where we're working through an implementation with a customer and they're going through that mapping process, and they may have some actual data gaps on the source side of things that obviously is going to block them from completing their mapping and thus their syndication to a retailer like Target. So Kyle, can you share a little bit with us about how you've seen customers work through filling those data gaps to meet the requirements of a given readiness report for a retailer?
Absolutely, Ametra. So absolutely, and really when when Ametra mentions that, Target may have a set of 100 total attributes we can send data to, but out of those 100, they classify maybe a chunk of 20 of those as really being required, meaning we need to ensure that we're delivering a valid value for those core attributes for us to be able to successfully publish content out of Salsify. So as Ametra mentioned, going through this process of mapping and aligning your data against these channel requirements and these retailer specific requirements can often result in identification of gaps, or Target's asking for country of origin, and maybe that's something we don't store in Salsify. So a lot of the customers I work with, and they hit a wall like that or hit one of these data gaps, like to take a step back and think who in the organization would own that data. So in the example of country of origin, maybe there's a regulatory division or some other team within the organization that we can sort of tap to get that information and hopefully load it into Salsify. So not every data gap needs to be resolved with data that we store in the actual product records either. There's often times where they may be looking for yes or no responses for your products for things like, is there a Prop 65 warning? And there's ways for us to do that in the actual readiness report without having to go and bring additional data into Salsify. So, but really trying to understand who's owning this data that we need, and then hopefully, getting engaged with those folks to get the information into Salsify and mapped correctly in the channel so you can publish.
That's great stuff, Kyle. Thanks. Tracy, I think we're ready to get to our next question.
Okay, so question number 2. How do we know what products are currently in a Salsify channel, and how can we drive that?
Yep, so here I'm back in my channel that I was just on previously. And as you guys can see, I've transitioned over to my products tab here.
Ametra, I think we still see the questions slide.
So I'm on my products screen here, guys, within my target channel. And as you can see, I have 9 products in my target demo right now. So right up top, I have some requirements set. So specifically for today, we're utilizing a list, and I have 9 products on that list, and it's for webinar products. But we are able to, of course, add different requirements. So in the case where there may be a larger brand that has sub-brands that may want to be sending data to target, they would let their sub-brand value drive their list and be able to filter their information that way. Or it could be a type of product, right? So maybe we only want to send a given product line to a specific retailer. So that way we would just be jumping into properties, for example, and filtering on something like brand, right? Where we could see that, use it as a value, could do it equals or it doesn't have a value, so on and so forth. But lists are also extremely useful. So I wanted to jump to Kyle and ask him another question just in terms of actually submitting products to the channel. What I'm showing right now is me controlling this manually, but of course, once I set the filter, it's there and it'll do that work for us. But Kyle, there's some other ways you've seen customers control what products are getting put into their channels?
Yeah, absolutely, Ametra. So the way you've done it here is certainly the most common and easiest way. So we can, as Ametra showed, filter on a brand type if we really wanted to publish brand A to Target and brand B to Walmart. That's a good way to segment those. We also have the concept of lists that Ametra mentioned, of a tool within Salsify to really just help you organize your product records, in any way that it makes sense to segment them. And then we can use that segmentation in the channel settings to make sure that that is the list of products that actually get published to that retailer as well. Some other common ways I've seen customers do it is we do have additional criteria to indicate products that were created within a certain time frame. Maybe you want to see all the products that have been updated since the last time you published the channel. These are all ways that we see customers, sort of customize that product feed to really match their business need and how they work with their retailer. And we also have the ability to sort of publish in one-offs, which may or may not make sense for the use case, but we don't always have to necessarily go and add a whole chunk of products to the channel and then go ahead and publish them in bulk. We could do that in more of a one-off method in the platform as well. So we try to make syndication flexible to really meet the needs, again, of your business and how you work with your retailers.
All right, Tracy, I think we're ready for question number 3.
All right. Is there a way in Salsify for us to see which products are ready or incomplete for reporting purposes?
Yes, so within a given channel, users of Salsify will always have the opportunity to do an actual download locally. So that'll give them the ability to see the actual products that are ready to be published, as well as the ones that are incomplete. But with that being said, I know that there are going to be times when customers don't just want to see that level of data. They want to have some sort of validation on their own side. So Kyle, can you share more about how customers can actually utilize a channel for internal data validation purposes?
Absolutely. So very similar to the target channel that we had taken a look at, where target goes in, defines out of those, again, 100 fields that we can potentially send data for, they can define which 20 of those are required. We also have a tool in Salsify called an internal readiness report that allows your company and your brand to set up a very similar readiness report that functions more of like an internal audit for your own content. Okay, so taking that one step further, imagine your organization stores 100 properties in Salsify, so 100, attributes, fields, data points that you store on your product records. We can set up a readiness report and allow you to define and say, we can't have a product considered ready until it has these 10 fields that have a populated value, a name, a description, a price, just for an example. Okay, so we can also kind of use that same level of readiness analysis, but let your organization define what a product, what deems a product ready per internal standards. So.
Thanks, Kyle. So it's obvious that capabilities within a given channel within Salsify are super important, right? Because it's critical to ensure that the data is ready and that we're getting the proper products to our retailers. So I think we're good on that one. Tracy, let's get to our next question. Or Kelsey. Now we're going to get to our next question. So how exactly does the publish process work in Salsify?
Sure. So there's a couple of different ways that a publish can work in Salsify. Ametra did a great job walking through kind of what the readiness and mapping process looks like. And once you get your products to a ready state, there will be a big blue publish button right in the right-hand side. And depending on the retailer that you're working with, that publish will do a number of different actions. So for example, if you are publishing a new item setup to Walmart, you'll have your channel kind of configured to say this is a new item setup and it's going to Walmart, and we will send that information directly via API to Walmart Supplier Center as a new item setup, and the channel will take care of all of those steps. For the example where the channel is configured to export to a product spreadsheet, hitting that publish button will generate a direct download of that retailer's spreadsheet in exactly their format with all of your validated content in it. And you can also have that send directly to your email if you'd like to keep a record of it for a later time. You do also have the option on any given channel to configure your export options. So if you want to send the export directly to an FTP server or to a Google Drive location or Dropbox or Box, you can configure a publish to land in any of those destinations, and Salsify will have you set up your credentials right there. And as both Kyle and Ametra mentioned, you can also set up the publish process to run on an automated cadence. So for example, we have many customers who will want to send any updated products to Walmart overnight, in which case they may set up their channel to have all of their products that are applicable for Walmart selected in the channel, have a filter on those to say anything that was updated in the last 24 hours, and then they may set that channel to run on a publication schedule to publish every night at midnight or 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. You can have those schedules run once per day, twice per day, several times per day, or you could also do them weekly or monthly or other cadences as well.
That's great. Thanks, Kelsey. So now I'm actually going to jump back into Salsify, and I'll show everyone what it looks like when we have a complete channel with 100% readiness for some of our products and what the feedback looks like. Yeah. So as you can see here, I'm currently in Salsify in a channel, and I'm on my overview tab. So straight away, we can obviously see the published history for our specific channel here. So I have the number of products that are currently in my channel. So it's 10 products. And then we see my name as the person that published them and what the status is. So with the status of completed, we actually have some feedback as well. But before we get into the feedback and how we can utilize different notifications and so on for that, I did want to take a look at a complete readiness report. So I just simply navigated to my readiness tab. So just as I showed on previous questions, the setup here is the same. Obviously, now I'm on my products view, and I can see that I have some products that are 100% ready for publish. So what that means is we've met all of our requirements based on our configured readiness report to send our data to Target. Of course, the second part of that is Target consuming that data and sending us some feedback. But just to take a look at what the actual attribution looks like on this side of things before we jump into the feedback, I'm going to scroll down. And just as I showed before, we can see that we have completion percentages of 100 on a lot of these based on the products that we have right now in our channel. Okay. So pretty simple. Green means good, pretty much, right? So if I jump back to my overview, I did want to actually walk through what some of that feedback looks like. Now, obviously, once we've gone through the publish process, it's super helpful for Target to send us back some specific information, right, based on the given data point. So obviously, you can see here that I'm back on my products view, and I am actually able to see this information here for a given product, but even further drilling down to a per attribute basis. Right, so on this side, we'll see some feedback about our specific property or the attribute that we sent Target, so we can open that up, right? So here for this product, this is information that Target is sending back that our product submission, unfortunately, did fail, and it's saying that we've already set up that product with a different product ID, right? And then not only do they give you that information, they go on to say, if you are trying to change the SKU's product ID, you have to indicate that in the request or the spec, right? So they give you that information at the higher level, but if I jump back out here, you can see that actually Salsify is going to give me a check that I've read that, so I'm good there. But once I jump here over to the right side, I can look at different attributes as well. So for item create type specifically, there's some feedback here. So you'll just see there's just an additional column that's added here to this table with the feedback from Target for this attribute, right? So let's open up one for item create type. So submit a supported value in accordance with our product data specifications. So it may be the case where we were utilizing a list of values, but maybe something has changed and maybe there's a lag there, or we just made a boo-boo in our mapping process. So that feedback is super helpful, right? So at that point, if it's something that we need to change on a data side of things, we'll have the marching orders to move forward with that. Or if it's something that we just need to update on our mapping. Maybe we misunderstood the expectation on the requirement and we need to change our source field. So it could be a couple of sources there for the root cause of those issues, but having the feedback from the retailer makes it extremely helpful and easy to go about making those updates. Now, something else that I do want to point out as it relates to feedback and Salsify for the publish process is that if I just simply jump here, when I logged in, of course, I wasn't straight away in my channel, but you can see here that Salsify, upon logging in, can even give me a task, right? So if I were to just jump here to check this task, it's actually telling me that my submission requires my attention, and the task is still active because I haven't fulfilled it yet, right? So not only are you going to get the notification when you're logging in the tool, I'm going to navigate back to my channel to show everyone what it looks like to get some outside of the platform notifications as well. So if I just navigate here, customers of Salsify do also have the ability to set up some email notifications. Of course, we always recommend in terms of best practices for email is when everything's going great, we don't want to get those emails. We really want to see when things aren't going so well. So we operate more on an exceptions basis for the email notifications. So in this case, of course, I'm logged into Salsify, so I see that there was an issue with my publication, but maybe I'm not slated to log in for a couple of days, but I also want to see this information. At that point, I will go about configuring an email notification within the tool, right? And then once I get that email, I'll know, oh, I need to log in to the system and make some updates. All right. So as everyone can see, managing channels in Salsify is pretty straightforward, and it's extremely useful for organizations focused on speedy syndication to retailers. Obviously, the efficiency that our readiness reports brings us is class A, right? And it's pushing us to give us quality product data to our retailers as well. And so I hope everyone walks away with that after seeing me walk through not only the mapping process, but also a complete channel and the feedback loop. Now I'm going to pass it to Tracy.
All right, and we do have a couple of questions, so we're going to take the opportunity to answer those.
All right, so I'll get us started and read off the first question here that we have. I think Kelsey's going to tackle for us. So can you restrict access to channels by users and groups, Kelsey?
Yes, you can. So you're actually able to configure for each individual channel which groups or roles should be able to access that channel. So it's quite common for customers to configure an Amazon user group and then use that to define access to the channel as well. So only adding users to that group, and that group grants access to just the Amazon channel. We have many customers who have even competitive sales groups that are working in the same organization. So security is very important to us. You can restrict access not just to various channels, but you can also restrict access to which teams can see which data attributes. So if you want to make sure that only your Walmart team can see the Walmart pricing attribute, you can do that. You can also restrict who can see which products. So if you have different business units all working in Salsify and you want your clothing team to only see the clothing products and your jewelry team to only see the jewelry products, you can do that as well. So security is definitely top of mind, and restricting access to channels is fully supported. The next question that I will pass over to Kyle is, if you need different requirements for a product category, do I have to set up separate channels for each category?
Yes, I can take that, and that's something I deal with a lot, being on the front lines of getting some of these channels set up. And to answer the question, certainly, we can support mapping across several categories within a single channel. I will preface, or I will add on to that by saying we may get to a point based on how many categories where it can make a little bit more sense, just ease of management and seeing what fields apply to your products to potentially segment out a second channel that's dedicated to a category. So we do really take it on a case-by-case basis. If you have 3 or 4 categories, maybe we do it in a single channel. If you have 10, 12 categories, then maybe we talk a little bit more about how we can group some of those together and just make the whole process and managing it a lot easier for you based on how many variations in your product type that you have. Okay. And I think the third question goes, I'll send it back to Kelsey here. And this one, I might even be able to speak a little bit to it after her, is the, can we use third parties to help submit marketing information to Salsify? So Kelsey, do you have anything there?
Yeah, I was gonna just say that this is super common. We often have customers invite their agency partners, content curation partners into Salsify directly. As I mentioned, there are a lot of great security features, so you can make sure that those teams only have access to the right products and they can only edit the right set of information, and you can use our workflow capabilities to really guide the activities of those teams. It depends a little bit on what you're using those teams for. So if you have a totally separate tool that you already use for below the fold content, you may not be able to publish that into Salsify to publish it out to a retailer. So there may be some places where you work in separate tools, but it's very common that we see our customers consolidate those different processes and the different teams all into Salsify to get those jobs done. Kyle, did you have anything to add there?
No, the key thing I was going to mention that you touched on right away is just tying off, or relating to your security piece of, if we are bringing in these other teams or other third-party marketing agencies to come and submit content in Salsify, really making sure that we've kind of locked them away from touching anything they shouldn't when they hit the system. But luckily, our security features can support all that. So. Cool. Ametra, were there any other questions that had come in outside of those three?
Nope, I think those were the only 3 questions that we had received from our audience. So now I'm just going to pass it to Tracy for any closing remarks.
All right, guys, thank you so much for your time today. This concludes today's webinar, but as a thank you for attending this Ask the Expert session, we are offering a complimentary one-on-one follow-up session with an expert to answer any specific questions you have aside from those that have already been covered. This expert session allows you to have the special attention of an industry professional to help you through your most difficult pain points. If you're interested in taking advantage of this one-on-one session, please respond to our follow-up email that will include the recording, or email us directly at experts@goamplify.com, and we'll be happy to get you started. We hope that this webinar gave you the opportunity to see what our company has to offer. Let's continue the conversation on how Amplifi can help your business with our MDM strategy and consulting services, as well as our solution delivery and optimization options too. You will receive your recording by email in the following days, and be sure to keep an eye out for more Ask the Expert sessions. We'll be looking forward to being your trusted, valuable resource in the MDM space. Have a great day.